everyone. My name is Faith Keene, and I am one of the Undersecretary Generals for Contemporary Crisis.
Right. And I'm Wes McKinnon. I'm also one of the Undersecretaries General for Contemporary Crisis.
Today, we're going to be talking about how you research for your committee. So a great starting place is to look at the background guides and the topic abstracts that we provide for you. And your staffers and all the Georgetown staffers have spent a lot of time pouring into these background guides and topic abstracts that are particular for your committee and really give you a good grounding point for when you're starting your research to understand sort of where you are and what type of information is relevant for your specific committee. And in general, you can sort of think of it in two categories based off what committee you're in. For general assemblies, generally you're assigned a country. So the most important topics are like geography, economy, culture, and past action of the country. And for crisis committees, when you're a person, what's most important is typically the historical time period, the biography, and portfolio powers.
All right, so now we're going to get into some of the details of what Faith just went over. So first, in terms of knowing your topic, right? So there are four main categories we like to split this into. The first is just an overall understanding. So before you get down into the nitty gritty of, dates and people and troop deployments and everything in between, just make sure you have a general idea of what's going on. Honestly, a great place to start for this is just, a lot of news organizations will have like a quick once-over sheet over a certain topic. The BBC has a lot of great resources in terms of timelines, but basically just a very surface level dive so that once you get into, figuring out some of the details, generally what's going on. Second, you'll want to acquaint yourself with the history of what's happened. So obviously that's going to impinge a lot on what's going on in the present. So, anything, whether your country has signed on to any recent UN resolutions, has taken any recent military actions, anything in between, that's going to be really, really helpful. The third category, of course, is the current situation. So what's going on now? That should be pretty intuitive going forward. And then finally, the future outlook. And that's going to be really, really important when you're talking about crafting a resolution to try to find a solution to the problem is, where do you think this is going next? What kind of solutions are you going to develop for this topic? A great place to look for this is various academic articles. A lot of times your committee topics will have been researched into by some of the brightest academic minds in the field. So some of these papers can get a little long, but they really have a lot of really, really good insight and possible strategies you can use to solve this problem.
Great. And now for knowing your country. Here we have a list of some of the most important topics. First, just starting off with geography, but you kind of want to know where your country is in terms of the globe and who your closest neighbors are and potential allies in that respect. And for history, sort of just get a general sense of what's happened with your country, sort of just a broad overview for that. And demographics, know like generally population size and in terms of the economy, such as like GDP and your allies for trading partners. And also it's important to know prominent religions, ideologies, cultural movements within the country. And you can sort of start to think about what would happen in committee in terms of sponsor and signatories on any relevant UN resolutions, and that can help shape your approach when you're in committee on conference weekend. And you can look into the recent actions in relation to the topic at hand of your committee.
This is going to apply more to crisis committees, but it can be helpful in a situation, which is to know your persona. So, sometimes delegates will go in knowing, maybe what their position is supposed to be, but not really knowing how the person that they're representing would have handled it. But that's going to be a really crucial part of any crisis committee. So first of all, when you're going in, know what your position is, know what your job is basically. Know what political party or ethnic group you're a part of, and how those affiliations may influence some of your decision making and influence your choice of allies. In that respect, make sure you know if your persona has any close relationships with other individuals in the committee, or conversely, if they're known to not get along with any other individuals in the committee. And that'll definitely be something to look out for in terms of making allies and also making sure that you're being faithful to the source material here. And then finally, make sure to know your portfolio powers. Some individuals can do some things, others can't. So if you're the Minister for Agriculture, please don't try and invade a neighboring country. You're not going to be able to do that. So just make sure that you know what your portfolio is capable of, what resources you have at hand, what kind of crisis arcs you can reasonably build.
Great. As Wes touched upon, you should know your friends and also your enemies. So, in general, in any committee, it's important to recognize who has similar political, economic, or cultural backgrounds as you, or similar priorities or other issues. And you can sort of plan for this pre committee. And also, it might change sort of in committee depending on the individual representing the country or person in real time and on the conference weekend. And it's important to recognize your close trading partners because you'll want to recognize them as your allies probably early on for your resolutions. And just try to think to yourself, is there anyone you would absolutely would not cooperate with? So you could think of that beforehand and also sort of reassess when you're in committee depending on who your fellow delegates are.
And finally, don't forget that we have a great list of resources as to where you can find all this info we just told you to go and take a look at. As Faith mentioned earlier, background guides are going to be really, really crucial. Your staff have been working diligently, making sure that we get all the best info in there. So please read them thoroughly. There will be a lot of incredibly relevant info there. And especially look at the questions to consider section near the end. That'll give you a hint as to which direction the chair wants to take the committee and cue you into some of the most important themes that we'll be discussing. Also, other good areas to take a look at are previous related UN resolutions. So, if there's a similar conflict that's occurred in the past, or maybe a committee that you're not on, but which does similar work, handled this issue. Take a look at what the UN has done there and see if there are any strategies or possible resolutions that you think you'd like to imitate. Also, make sure that you know your operating procedures for your committee in the real world. Some UN committees operate differently than others. Some have different powers and what's achievable given a resolution in them than others. So make sure that you're familiar with that. And then finally, to find some of the background info we touched on, a great resource is the CIA Fact Book to find some basic demographic information, to figure out how a country is run, get some key points in the history and everything in between. So I definitely recommend checking that out as a starting point. And as I mentioned earlier, the BBC timelines are also going to be a great, quick way to keep up with the history of an event. It'll be a very quick bulleted list of year, date, and it'll cue you in to make sure you're ready to go as soon as the conference starts. And then finally, especially for committees that are dealing with contemporary events, and we are the USGs of contemporary crisis after all. So make sure to keep up with the news. A lot of topics that our committees are dealing with are, very current, and a lot of these situations may even evolve between the time that we finish and send the background guide out and when the conference actually occurs. So just make sure that you're keeping up with everything, and you'll be ready to go on committee session 1.